We were gonna do a Drawtober video, but I kinda, So we're talking about our county collector piece for this. Gosh, it seems like the previous studio tour was just like a couple months ago.
The last one got delayed. This one's on schedule.
So we kind of are still recovering from the last one.
Which was kind of a fun little just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks kind of thing.
That's my entire creative process, dude.
This year, we struggled a little bit coming up with a good idea.
So we just used all of them.
And what we settled with was...
all of them, I think.
Trying to do something that would showcase everything that we do. We wanted to incorporate digital drawing, 3D printing, electronics, resin crafting, and wood crafting, technically. We had all of that combined into a single project, which turned out to be... It was a bit of a clusterfuck. There was a lot of trial and error. We printed the lithophane like 4 or 5 times. Different filaments, different print settings. We had a bunch of problems with the printer.
We tried a couple of different types of filament. We had a semi-translucent natural colored filament that I thought would look cool, but it turned out to be a little too clear, so too much light was getting through it. It wasn't showing a lot of contrast, so actually having too much light go through the picture makes it less effective. So then we found another one that was like a tan, so that's what we went with.
We started with the lithophane itself. We had a bunch of pieces from Drawtober the year before.
The theme of the original drawing was organic, with the crystals and the deer skull and the roses, so they were all kind of things that you would find in nature.
I had looked up a couple of basic circuits online. I had already been doing some research on LED stuff, but I wanted to make a simple analog circuit that I could make a couple of without having to do any extra programming and without having to include a microcontroller. So what I ended up doing was using a decade counter circuit with a 555 timer, which just has an adjustable frequency, and the decade counter just steps through 10 different states. Each output of the decade counter is connected to between 7 and 8 LEDs, and since the LEDs are RGB, each position essentially has 3 lights in it. Total of 75 LEDs. If you divide that by 10, you get 7.5. So half of them have 7 LEDs connected, and then half of them have 8. And I basically picked the positions at random to try to make it look like it was sparkling at higher frequencies. The light kind of dances a little bit. I ran into a couple problems. So the first problem I ran into was I found out, and this is a complete noob mistake, if I had properly read the datasheet, I would have realized this up front, but when you hook up LEDs in parallel and the LEDs are different colors. Actually, if the LEDs are just different LEDs, some of them want more current than others, and that means that if you hook them all up in parallel, the one that wants the most current is going to be the one that turns on, and all the rest of them are going to stay off, unless you up the voltage. Now, I did end up increasing the voltage, but I ended up having to put some extra resistors in line with the different colors to actually get them to all turn on at the same level of brightness, which was annoying, and I didn't know I had to do that, and that was a dumb thing, and it cost me only about an hour of rework or something like that. But I had already started soldering things together when I found that problem, which is really annoying. But the other thing that's really annoying is that the potentiometers that I'm using to control the frequency on the 555 timer are not the best. You have really, really low frequency where it's changing over like once a second. There's like a middle point where you can speed it up, and then if you just ever so slightly twitch it to the right, it sets it so that they're always on. Because at that point the frequency just goes so fast that you can't see it blinking anymore. One really cool side effect of that is that once you go past that point, as you adjust the frequency, because the wiring of the LEDs is kind of random, going to even higher frequencies after you can't see it blink anymore changes the distribution of the colors, creating this really interesting color pattern.
Basically, the composition is you've got the 3D printed frame with some epoxy resin and assorted organic and non-organic materials. Jeremy wanted me to do something with turquoise colored resin because he thought that would look really good with the copper colored filament that we used for the frame. The combination of those colors makes me think of a certain, I don't want to say like nautical, but specifically like steampunky kind of fantasy nautical thing. What is the specific image that always comes to mind?
Those ancient diving suits, the brass ones.
I was thinking, for some reason specifically, some of Enya's early albums, like Shepherd Moons, it had that blue, oceanic sort of antique quality that also, I guess, I kind of had a little bit of a synesthetic association between that and the music, and that song Caribbean Blue that was on that album. Another thing it sort of reminds me of is, I think there was one area in one of of the Myst games that looked like that. I'm really showing my age here. So there was that, and then I pulled out my seashells that I collected from our trip to Cape May in 2019, which I don't think I actually ended up using any of those shells because I didn't have many that were small enough, so I just used the craft ones that I'd purchased. But I was looking at those shells for inspiration, and I was thinking about how that was like one of the last long vacations that we went on before the pandemic, and a bunch of other things changed for us around that time, right before we started house hunting and before we moved. And so I started thinking about feeling nostalgic for a specific time or place that doesn't exist, or it's inaccessible, or it's not the same as it was. And it kind of became this sort of elegy for the world the way it used to be. I know we're all anxious for things to get back to quote-unquote normal, or as close to normal as they were in the before times, but some things might never feel the same. Looking back from early 21, the whole thing just felt surreal and almost decadent in a way. The worst thing that happened to me on that trip was I got some sort of food poisoning or norovirus and spent the next week or so. Looking back on that time, it almost feels like a different world. And I was thinking about that Shakespeare line from The Tempest, like, full fathom 5, thy father lies, of his bones are coral made, those are pearls that were his eyes. About the sea change. So I was thinking of like a sea change, like something that was lost, resurfacing in a different form, or as something that you don't really recognize right away because it underwent this transformation. And then I started thinking about this song by Seeming called Stranger, where there's a line like, there are things beneath the sea that blur the line from plant to beast, or something like that. I noticed some of the sticks I was putting in the borders looked kind of like animal bones, and this little cluster of seed pods almost looked like the eggs of some kind of creature. And I had seashells coming out of branches and stuff, transforming back and forth one to the other. Oh, so there's layers to this strictly ornamental thing. So it's probably a little bit of overthinking on my part.
I didn't realize you had put that much thought into it.
Well, it was just my thought process that was running in the background as I was putting these things together. And TLDR, I just put things in because it's shiny and looks cool.
The thing about the lithophane is that you can't really see it unless it's dark. And that wasn't entirely intentional. What I wanted was for the backlight to be a little brighter than it actually ended up being. Part of the problem is that the LEDs, when they're illuminated by themselves at 100% duty cycle, they are almost too bright. When you crank the frequency up and all the lights are on, they're still technically blinking, which means they're not on at 100% duty cycle. There's 3 leads and there's 10 outputs, so each LED is only on for 30% of the time. So even with the thing turned all the way up with the highest frequency, it's 30% as bright as it could be if it was 100. Unfortunately, what you get with that is that when there's still a lot of light around, you can still see the backlight, but you don't really see the image because you're still seeing the reflection of light on the surface of the lithophane. All that to say, the piece itself has a very different appeal in the dark. I guess you could say it transforms as the sun goes down.
Full circle, baby.
The little robot legs that we stuck on there were inspired by some previous pieces that I had done. One of the things that we did when I was coming up with ideas for how to attach the frame with the lithophane in it to the actual box that contained the LEDs, my last minute idea was, if during the day the backlight isn't strong enough, wouldn't it be cool if whoever bought it could just take the lithophane off and hang it in a window so it just sticks on with magnets, and then you could just take it off. Of course, if you want to purchase it, it's going to be 10 a.m. on the first day of the studio tour, which is
May something.
Right, so join us at the Chester County Studio Tour on May 15th and 16th. Same studio that we did last year. This year we actually bought a couple of extra frames. So this is essentially like a prototype because we're going to try to make more of these. And we're going to do them a little bit differently. Different materials, different resin. I'll probably be doing a different circuit as well. I'm still going to use the same LEDs, but I might do like a fading effect instead of the blinking effect, and certainly a different image for the lithophane. We'll come up with something.